Third indication. Let it not be thought that petty man is too insignificant for this vast world to be brought to an end, and another realm to be unfolded simply for the sake of his being brought to account. For apparently petty man bears great importance as the master of all creatures, by virtue of the comprehensiveness of his disposition, as the herald of God's monarchy, and the manifester of universal worship. Also, let nobody ask, how can one earn eternal torments in the course of a very brief life? For unbelief seeks to direct creation, something as valuable and exalted as a letter written by God, down to the depths of meaninglessness and purposelessness. It is an insult to all being, since it denies and rejects the manifestations and impresses of God's sacred names that are visible in all being, and it seeks to negate all the infinite proofs that demonstrate the veracity and truthfulness of God Almighty. Hence, unbelief is a crime of infinite proportions, deserving of infinite punishment. Fourth indication. In this story, we saw by means of 12 aspects that a king who had one realm resembling a transcendent hospice must of a necessity have another realm, one eternal and permanent, manifesting his splendor and the sublimity of his power. In the same way, it is not at all possible that the eternal creator of the transcendent world should not create also an eternal realm. It is not possible that the everlasting maker of this fine but unstable cosmos should not create another cosmos, permanent and lasting. It is not possible that the wise, powerful and merciful creator of this world, which is like an exhibition or a testing ground or a field, should not create also a hereafter in which the purposes of this world shall be made manifest. Entry is to be had to this truth by means of 12 gates, and the 12 gates are to be unlocked by means of 12 other truths. We will begin with the shortest and simplest of them. First truth, the gate of dominicality and sovereignty, the manifestation of the name of Sustainer. Is it at all possible that the glory of God's dominicality and His divine sovereignty should create a cosmos such as this in order to display His perfections with such lofty aims and elevated purposes, without establishing a reward for those believers who through faith and worship respond to these aims and purposes? Or that He should not punish those misguided ones who treat His purposes with rejection and scorn? Second truth, the gate of generosity and mercy, the manifestation of the names of generous and merciful. Is it at all possible that the Lord of this world, who in His works demonstrates infinite generosity, infinite mercy, infinite splendor, and infinite glory, should not give reward in a manner befitting His generosity and mercy, and not punish in a manner befitting His splendor and glory? If one looks at the disposition of affairs in this world, one sees that all animate beings, from the weakest to the most powerful, are given some fitting form of sustenance. Note: all licit nourishment is obtained not through the exercise of strength, but through the existence of need. The decisive proof of this is that powerless infants enjoy the finest of livelihoods, while strong wild beasts suffer from all kinds of deficiency, and that fish, for all their lack of intelligence, wax fat, while the cunning fox and monkey remain thin in their quest for livelihood. There is, therefore, an inverse relationship between sustenance on the one hand and strength and willpower on the other. The more one relies on strength and willpower, the more difficult it will be to sustain one's livelihood. Indeed, the weakest and most powerless are given the best form of sustenance. This largesse and bounty is distributed with such lofty generosity that the hand of infinite generosity is manifestly at work. For example, in the spring, all the trees are garbed in cloths as fine as silk, just like the houris in paradise. They are encrusted with flowers and fruits, as if with jewels, and caused to offer us numerous varieties of the choicest fruits, on branches delicately outstretched like the hands of a servant. Similarly, we are given wholesome and sweet honey to eat from the hand of the bee with its sting. We are clothed in the finest and softest of clothes by means of an insect that has no hands, and within a small seed a great treasure of mercy is preserved for us. It is self-evident that all of this is the effect of a most beauteous generosity, a most delicate sense of mercy. Then too, the fact that, with the exception of man and certain wild animals, all things from the sun, the moon, and earth to the smallest of creatures perform their functions with the utmost exactitude, do not overstep their bounds by an inch, and observe a universal obedience in a spirit of great awe. This shows that they act by the command of a possessor of great glory and dignity. It is also apparent that the fashion in which all mothers in the vegetable, animal, and human realms succor their weak and powerless infants with the delicate nurture of milk, in tender compassion, is a manifestation of God's all-embracing mercy. Note, the fact that a hungry lion will prefer its offspring to itself and give to it a piece of meat it would otherwise have eaten, that the cowardly rabbit will attack a lion in order to protect its young, that the fig tree contents itself with mud while giving pure milk to its offspring, the fruit. This shows to anyone not blind that they act in accordance with the commands of a being infinitely merciful, generous, and solicitous. Again, the fact that even unconscious plants and beasts function in the wisest and most conscious of fashions demonstrates irrefutably that one utterly knowing and all-wise has set them to work, and that they are acting in His name. Since the Master of this world has, then, such infinite generosity, mercy, splendor, and glory, it follows that His infinite glory and splendor require the chastisement of the discourteous, that His infinite generosity requires infinite bounty, and His infinite mercy requires a bestowal of favor worthy of itself. Now, in this transitory world and brief life, only a millionth part of all this, like one drop from the ocean, establishes and manifests itself. There must, therefore, be a realm of blessedness appropriate to that generosity and worthy of that mercy. One would otherwise have to deny the existence of the mercy that is visible to us, and this would be like denying the existence of the sun that fills every day with its light. For irrevocable death would transform compassion into disaster, love into affliction, blessing into vengeance, intellect into a tool of misery, and pleasure into pain, so that the very essence of God's mercy would vanish. There must, in addition, be a realm of punishment appropriate to God's glory and dignity. For, generally, the oppressor leaves this world while still in possession of his might, and the oppressed while still subjected to humiliation. These matters are therefore deferred for the attention of a supreme tribunal. It is not that they are neglected. It sometimes happens, too, that punishment is enacted in this world. The torments suffered by disobedient and rebellious peoples in previous centuries show that man is not left to his own devices, and that he is always subject to the blows that God's splendor and majesty may choose to inflict on him. Is it at all possible that man should have the most important duty in all of creation and be endowed with the most important capacities, that man's sustainer should make himself known to him with all his well-ordered works, and man should then fail to recognize him in return by way of worship? Or that God should make himself beloved of man through the numerous adorned fruits of his mercy, and man should then fail to make himself beloved of God through worship? or that God should demonstrate his love and mercy to man through his variegated bounties, and man should then fail to respect him with thanks and with praise? Is it at all possible that man should remain unpunished, left to his own devices, or that powerful possessor of splendor and glory should not make ready for him a realm of requital? Is it at all possible, on the other hand, that he should not prepare a realm of reward and eternal bliss for those believers who respond to the merciful and compassionate ones, making himself known by recognizing him in faith, to his making himself beloved by loving him in worship, and to his mercy by offering thanks and veneration? Third truth, the gate of wisdom and justice, the manifestation of the names of wise and just. Is it at all possible that the Lord of glory, who demonstrates his dominical sovereignty in the wisdom and order, the justice and equilibrium that pervade all things, from the atom to the sun, should not bestow favor on those believers who seek refuge beneath the protective wing of his dominicality, who believe in his wisdom and justice, and whose acts are for the purpose of worshipping him? Note, the sentence, "Is it at all possible?" is indeed repeated many times because it expresses a most significant mystery. Misguidance and lack of belief generally spring from the habit of imagining things to be impossible, far removed from the realm of reason, and therefore denying them. Now, in this discussion of resurrection, it has been decisively demonstrated that through impossibility, absurdity, and irrationality pertain to the path of misbelief and the road of misguidance, whereas through possibility, facility, and rationality are characteristics of the path of faith and highway of Islam. In short, the philosophers tend to unbelief on account of their regarding things as impossible, whereas the 10th word, discussion of resurrection, by means of the repeated sentence, "Is it at all possible?" shows where impossibility lies, and thus deals them a blow in the mouth. Again, is it possible that he should not chastise those rude and discourteous men who disbelieve in his wisdom and justice, and rebel against him in insolence? Now, not even a 1,000th part of that wisdom and justice is exercised with respect to man in this transcendent world. It is rather deferred. Most of the people of misguidance leave this world unpunished, and most of the people of guidance leave it unrewarded. All things are, then, postponed for a supreme tribunal and ultimate bliss. Yes, it is apparent that the being who controls this world does so in accordance with an infinite wisdom. Do you require a proof? It is the preservation of interest and benefit in all things. Do you not see that numerous wise benefits are intended in all the limbs, bones, and veins of man, even in the cells of his brain and in every particle of his body? Do you not see that from certain limbs wise benefits are to be had as numerous as the fruits of a tree? All of this shows that matters are done in accordance with infinite wisdom. The existence of the utmost regularity in the making of all things is a proof of the same truth. The compression of the exact program of development of a beautiful flower into a minute seed, the inscription on a small seed by the pen of destiny of the scroll of deeds of a tree, its life history, and list of equipment show that a pen of utmost wisdom is at work. The existence of a high degree of fine artistry in all things proves that there exists also the impress of an infinitely wise maker. Further, the inclusion within the minute body of man of an index of all being, of the keys to all the treasuries of mercy, and of the mirrors of all the divine names, demonstrates the existence of wisdom within that infinitely fine artistry. Now, is that all possible that the wisdom that thus permeates the workings of dominicality should not wish eternally to favor those who seek refuge beneath the wing of dominicality and who offer obedience in faith? Do you wish for a proof that all things are done with justice and balance? The fact that all things are endowed with being, given shape and put in their appropriate place in accordance with precise equilibrium and in appropriate measure, shows that all matters are done in accordance with infinite justice and balance. Similarly, the fact that all things are given their rights in accordance with their disposition, that they receive all the necessities of their being and all the requirements of life in the most fitting form, this too is the sign left by a hand of infinite justice. Again, the fact that answer is always given to every petition and request made by the tongue of disposition and of natural needs or necessity demonstrates the extent of infinite justice and wisdom. Now, is it at all possible that the justice and wisdom that hasten to relieve the pettiest need of the smallest of creation should fail to provide immortality, the greatest need of man, the greatest of creatures? That it should fail to respond to his greatest plea and cry for assistance? Or that it should not preserve the dignity of God's demonicality by preserving the rights of his servants? Man, whose life is so brief, cannot experience the true essence of justice in this transcendent world. It is for this reason that matters are postponed for a supreme tribunal. For true justice requires that man, this apparently petty creature, should be rewarded and punished, not in accordance with his pettiness, but in accordance with the magnitude of his crime, the importance of his nature, and the greatness of his function. Since this passing and transcendent world is far from manifesting such wisdom and justice for man, who is created for eternity, of necessity there will be an eternal hell, an everlasting paradise of that just and awesome possessor of beauty, that wise and beauteous possessor of awe. Fourth truth, the gate of generosity and beauty, the manifestation of the names of generous and beautiful. Is it at all possible that infinite generosity and liberality, inexhaustible riches, unending treasures, peerless and eternal beauty, flawless and everlasting perfection should not require the extent of grateful supplicants, yearning spectators, and astounded onlookers, all destined to stay an eternity in an abode of bliss, a place of repose? Yes, adorning the face of the world with all these objects of beauty, creating the moon and the sun as its lamps, filling the surface of the earth with the finest varieties of sustenance, and thus making it a banquet of bounty, making fruit trees into so many dishes, and renewing them several times each season. All this shows the extent of infinite generosity and liberality. Such unending liberality and generosity, such inexhaustible treasures of mercy, require the extent of an abode of repose, a place of bliss, that shall be everlasting and contain all desirable objects within it. They also require that those who enjoy such bliss should remain in that abode of repose eternally, without suffering the pain of cessation and separation. For just as the cessation of pain is a form of pleasure, so too the cessation of pleasure is a form of pain, one that such infinite generosity is unwilling to countenance. It requires, then, the extent both of an eternal paradise and of supplicants to abide in it eternally. Infinite generosity and liberality desire to bestow infinite bounty and infinite kindness. The bestowal of infinite bounty and infinite kindness require in turn infinite gratitude. This necessitates the perpetual existence of those who receive all the kindness so that they can demonstrate their thanks and gratitude for that perpetual bestowal and constant bounty. A petty enjoyment, made bitter by cessation and lasting for only a brief time, is not compatible with the requirements of generosity and liberality. Look too at the different regions of the world, each like an exhibition where God's crafts are displayed. Pay attention to the dominical proclamations in the hands of all the plants and animals on the face of the earth, and listen to the prophets and the saints, the heralds of the beauties of dominicality. Note: the existence of a brightly designed and brilliantly adorned flower, a most artfully conceived and bejeweled fruit on a twig as thin as a wire, affixed to a dry, bone-like tree. This is without doubt a proclamation to all animate beings of the fine arts produced by a most skilled, wise, and miraculous Maker. This holds true not only of the vegetable kingdom, but also of the animal realm. They unanimously display the flawless perfections of the glorious Maker by demonstrating his miraculous arts, and thus invite the gazes of man. The Maker of these worlds has, then, most important, astounding, and secret perfections. It is this he wishes to display by means of his miraculous arts. For secret, flawless perfection wishes to be manifested to those who will appreciate, admire, and wonderingly gaze at it. Eternal perfection requires eternal manifestation. Such eternal manifestation in turn requires the perpetual existence of those who are to appreciate and admire it. The value of perfection will always sink in the view of its admirer if he is devoid of perpetual existence. Note: there is a proverbial occurrence pertaining to this point. A celebrated beauty once expelled from her presence a common man who had become infatuated with her. In order to console himself, he said, "How ugly she is," thus denying her beauty. Once a bear stood beneath a wine trellis and wished to eat the grapes, but he was unable to reach out for the grapes or to climb up the trellis. So he said to himself by way of consolation, "The grapes must be sour," and groveling went on his way. Again, the beauties, artistic, brilliant, and adorned creatures that cover the face of the globe bear witness to the fairness of a peerless, transcendent beauty and indicate the subtle charms of an unparalleled, hidden pulchritude, just as sunlight bears witness to the sun. Note: although all beings that act as mirrors for God's beauty constantly vanish and disappear, those that succeed them display and manifest in their forms and features the same beauty and fairness. This shows that the beauty in question does not belong to them. The visible instances of beauty are rather the signs and indications of a transcendent and sacred beauty. Each manifestation of that sacred, transcendent beauty indicates the existence of countless hidden treasures in each of God's names. Now, so exalted, peerless, and hidden a beauty, just as it desires to view its own fairness in a mirror and to behold the degrees and measures of its beauty in an animate reflection, desires also to become manifest in order to look on its own beauty through the eyes of others. That is, it wishes to look at its own beauty in two ways. Firstly, by beholding itself in mirrors of variegated color. Secondly, through the gaze of yearning witnesses to itself, of bewildered admirers of its beauty. In short, beauty and fairness desire to see and be seen. Both of these require the existence of yearning witnesses and bewildered admirers. And since beauty and fairness are eternal and everlasting, their witnesses and admirers must have perpetual life. An eternal beauty can never be satisfied with transient admirers. An admirer condemned to irreversible separation will find his love turning to enmity once he conceives of separation. His admiration will yield to ridicule, his respect to contempt. For just as obstinate man is an enemy to what is unknown to him, so too he is opposed to all that lies beyond his reach, and love that is not infinite will respond to a beauty that deserves unending admiration with implicit enmity, hatred, and rejection. From this, we understand the profound reason for the unbeliever's enmity to God. So endless generosity and liberality, peerless fairness and beauty, flawless perfection, all these require the existence of eternally grateful and longing supplicants and admirers. But we see in this hospice of the world that everyone quickly leaves and vanishes, having had only a taste of that generosity, enough to whet his appetite, but not to satiate him, and having seen only a dim light coming from the perfection, or rather a faint shadow of its light, without in any way being fully satisfied. It follows, then, that men are going towards a place of eternal joy, where all will be bestowed on them in full measure. In short, just as this world, with all its creatures, decisively demonstrates the existence of the glorious Maker, so too do his sacred attributes and names indicate, show, and logically require the existence of the hereafter.